The ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. President, I wish to indicate that this is a money bill and that I have the Speaker's certificate, which provides me with the authority to proceed with this bill. Mr. President, the bill before us, it's the formality, it is the legal framing of the debate that has been held over the last 3 days on the estimates for revenues and expenditure for 2021. And outlined within the bill before us gives the specific allocations, vote by vote, which then speaks to the different programs that are outlined within the budget, which we have discussed, deliberated on in detail over the past couple of days. And what we spoke of the extraordinary times that we currently find ourselves. It spoke to the challenges that we face, both in terms of lives and livelihoods at this time. It spoke to the need to carefully construct a program of work for the year ahead of us that will address the critical priority of a path to recovery for our economy. And at the heart of that is the preservation of jobs for those who have, and the creation of jobs for those who do not have. Mr. President, I cannot emphasize enough the need for cooperation at this time. What is being asked of us is not just of government. It's not just of our public workers. It's not just of the executive. It's not just of the business community. Our civil society, our churches, the labor movement. This is an extraordinary time that is calling for extraordinary leadership and calling for extraordinary levels of cooperation. On reflection, there was one point I missed in my wrapping up of the debate. And it was a point that was made by Senator Diali on risks that are associated with the budget. And he spoke to implementation as a major risk. And we spoke to all of the measures that government has put in place, is continuing to put in place to ensure that that implementation deficit that we have a history of is addressed. So how do we mitigate that risk? The second risk is what is happening externally to us with the pandemic. There's so much that is outside of our control with regard to this global crisis. So that is a risk. The implementation piece is a risk that is within our control. The global crisis is outside of our control, but how we respond to it is to some extent within our control. But the third area that Senator Diali spoke of was the labor climate, the industrial climate, and the risk associated with that. He eloquently ran through the different components, the moving parts that determine whether that industrial climate is one that is conducive to us all putting our shoulders, our collective shoulders to the wheel to achieve this ambitious plan. But it's the only plan that we have. Mr. President, this call for collective action, collective responsibility, collective cooperation. I wish Senator Lewis, through you, Mr. President, was in the chamber at that time to hear the conversation. He and I have been having discussions outside of this chamber, again about the need for this mutual cooperation, and sensing that there's a meeting of minds in terms of the importance for a level of maturity, a level of responsibility, a level of leadership that is needed for us to achieve this. And I don't know, I'm going to throw this out, Mr. President, and I'm happy to be wrong. But if my understanding is correct, at the time we were having that discussion, or Senator Dialli was presenting about that risk with regard to industrial relations, there were others who were outside of the chamber engaging in discussions regarding industrial action within one of our essential services on a matter that speaks to an individual matter where resolution had been found and established within the organization. And then there's a turn of events. I don't know what would have inspired that turn of events, but having employer and employee reaching a mutual agreement on separation, the acceptance of the terms of that separation to the satisfaction of both parties, then a turn of events. Which has been escalated beyond what is in the direct interest of that individual, of employer and employee, to a point where there are those that are calling for a strike action at a time of national and international crisis, in an essential service that impacts every Grenadian at a time of crisis and at a time where we're talking about the need for cooperation. I'm happy to be wrong. But if my understanding is correct, it brings into question all that we've discussed leading up to this. This collective aspiration to do what is best for the country in these difficult times. To climb a mountain when some of us may be trying to undermine that work. But for why? What reason? I believe an explanation is due, Mr. President. Because I do not understand. I do not understand what we have just gone through these last 2 days. Laying out a plan of action that will create jobs and protect lives for an individual. So, Mr. President, I throw that out as I once again outline the significance of the bill that is before us and the content of the work programs that are contained within it. And I simply want to underscore the importance of all stakeholders, all Grenadian citizens, patriots, nationalists, to come together, to work together in what is in the interest of every man, woman, and child of this country, and not just for today. This is about laying a foundation, protecting this generation, and continue to build a foundation for generations to come. So, Mr. President, as I lay before this House the bill before us, it is that call for collective action and collective cooperation that I commend this bill to this honourable House.
Thank you, Senator Steele. No, the bill wasn't
Mr. President,
the motion wasn't debated. This is
I rise to give my full support to the second reading of the bill that is. Mr. President, I rise to give my full support to the second reading of the bill that is before this honorable House, and to speak to the time and the season that we are in. And it is no question that in order for us to get through this, there must be a meeting of the minds. But most importantly, a decision to working together. As we all are aware, the COVID-19 pandemic, nobody called it on themselves. We didn't call it into Grenada. The world didn't call it, but it came. And with it coming, it has disrupted the lives of everyone in this globe. And as such, it calls for us to soberly look at what is before us and how we can get through this period in one piece. But we understand there will be efforts, probably, that will not work toward this one piece, but we can only ask for it. Before us, we have just $1.2 billion budget that we want to get passed. And why, Mr. President? To ensure that the measures that we have spoken about in this budget debate is realized. We spoke of, yes, a decline of 12.5 or 12.6% in the last few months or within this year. And we are hoping that we will be able to turn this around next year. And we projected 6% growth. 6% growth is hinged upon a very strong and robust private sector investment program. Yes, the projects are there. Approval have been granted. What is before us is to ensure that we have an environment that will be conducive for this to happen. Government could create the environment, but in order for this to be achieved, we must have people willing to work. COVID has, in fact, interfered with that positive environment that we have created. There should be nothing more and nothing else coming to further disrupt the lives and the direction that we want to see this economy go in 2021. Nothing else should come to disrupt that. So, Mr. President, I want to speak to the people of Grenada, Carrick, and Peter Martinique. We have an opportunity before us to work together and to advance this economy, to move it in the direction that we believe we have the ability to take it, and at the same time to bring our workers along, bring our hard-working men and women of this country along without further disruption in their lives. I remember in my presentation, I spoke to us working as a team, starting inside of this chamber, both sides of the aisle working together to create that environment for the nation to succeed. And I called passionately upon my fellow members on the other side. Let's work as a team to achieve the goals that we have set ourselves. I'm making that call again. We have to work together. Mr. President, I just want to look at a quote from the World Economic Forum within the World Bank. And it said many of the most vulnerable developing countries, including small island developing states, may not be able to endure and recover from this crisis in the absence of adequate development financing. Unquote. The outlook before us is bleak. The outlook is stating that it's going to be difficult. We should not do anything, Mr. President, to make it become more difficult. Any disruption in the peace and harmony of this country will create that environment to cause it to become more difficult. According to the outlook, we will need support. And in order to harness or to get the support that we need in this time, there must be a culture of peace. There must be an environment of peace and working together. If not, remember I said, if we politicize health and other issues, it creates that problem for us that much needed aid could be lost. And I'm seeing before us, Mr. President, that's staring us in the face. What the leader of government business just spoke to a while ago, and he said he hoped he's wrong. If that is true, this could be double jeopardy for us. COVID is one terrible thing already. Business entities are stretched to the limit. Some holding the strain and not wanting to sever any workers in this point, in this period. They're holding the strain, some over an overdraft, to keep this going, keep this afloat. Why do we want to make it more difficult? So I want to speak to the workers out there. It's a risk you will take, and you will go against all COVID protocols if you go on mass demonstration and so forth. But what is dangerous here, Mr. President, is the signal or the message that we're sending to the outside world. Do we want to send that negative message and disrupt the opportunity for us to get that sort of support that we are seeing from our friendly governments? Do we really want to do this? I don't think so. I don't think you want to do this. Yes, it might be for a fallen soldier. But if a soldier has made a decision to accept separation and agreed to terms in this regard, well then, let it allow to flow. Why are we trying to change this? And at the same time, to create a climate that could be painful to all of us. I am calling on my brothers and sisters at this point to let's look at the bigger good. Let's look at Grenada. Let's look at our children. Let's look at the message that we will send. In the Prime Minister's last address, he spoke to curtailing of movements, and over a 7-day period, we will look to review. If we will take this time to demonstrate and to in mass march the streets and so forth, we might just be sending the wrong message to our young people that it could be life as usual and they could involve themselves into activities that could create the environment for the pandemic. Do we really want to do this? I always believe there is a seat at the table where we can speak as partners and find solution. But allow the process to be followed. There are mechanisms established to bring solution to problems. And if the mechanism fails, then we go to the other level. Let's not breach the gap, jump the gun. Let's allow the mechanism that has been established to function. Allow it. After all, we are people of law and order. Let's allow it. Let's allow it. Let's not send the wrong message out there. And I do believe we can sit back and think about it. And I want to speak to the one employee leader of government business spoke about. I want to speak to you. You can put this to rest. There was a big man agreement with your employer and decide to move, and that was agreed to. You agreed to the terms, and you receive a settlement, and you are happy with it. This is in your hand. you can put an end to this right now and say, my word that I gave when I agreed to the terms is more important at this point. Let your word stand. Protect your fellow brothers and sisters who can be exposed to so many different things. But given COVID is a wrong, let's not create an environment for further problem in this country. And what is even worse, if anything should fall out as a result, negatively, from any escalation of demonstration and so forth, and there could be infection from COVID or so, it even make it worse for the entire state. Because we understand how much productivity drops when one person is infected with COVID-19. Because not just the one person, but all those who came in contact with them. Let us balance this out. And I do trust that we will allow the spirit of the season of love, peace, and harmony to take precedence over everything else. And thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Garvey. Senator Steele?
Thank you, Mr. President. So, Mr. President, I think we've outlined the importance of the bill before us, the work plan that is before us, and the need for all stakeholders, all nationals, to play their part, their role, take on their responsibility, demonstrate leadership to what is in the best interest of the people of Grenada, Carriacou, and Petite Martinique. And it's for those reasons, Mr. President, that I commend this bill for its second reading.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Appropriation 2021 Bill 2020.
Mr. President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honorable members, the question is that the bill, Appropriation 2021 Bill 2020, be read for a third time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. All those who have that opinion say aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. This bill has passed.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Appropriation 2021 Bill 2020.
Mr. President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Budget 2021 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2020.
The bill to authorize the Minister of Finance to borrow from various sources an amount of 330 million Eastern Caribbean dollars, shortly entitled 2021 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2020.
Mr. President, I beg to move the relevant standing order of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all its stages at this sitting.
Be suspended in order to enable the bill to be taken through all of its stages at this sitting of the House. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Fantastic.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill, and as this is a money bill, I wish to state that I have the Speaker's certificate, which gives me the authority to proceed. Mr. President, again, this is a standard procedure which is seeking parliamentary approval in order for the government of Grenada to engage certain lending institutions to access loan resources that will be used to finance the budget. The amount stated for this loan authorization bill is a sum of 330 million Eastern Caribbean dollars. But, Mr. President, it's important to note a number of things. First of all, the deficit the government is seeking to bridge, the financing it's seeking, the deficit in the budget is a sum of 18 million EC dollars. The $330 million that's outlined in this bill covers a number of elements. Of the $330 million, $152.5 million of this is for the reissuance of Treasury bills and notes comprising of regional government securities markets, RGSM, and non-RGSM issues. And this is called a reissuance, or the colloquial term is a rollover. These are Treasury bills, Treasury notes that have become mature, and that sum basically will turn to zero, but then the immediate rollover of an additional bonds, Treasury notes to cover that debt window. So there is funds that are coming in, funds going out at the same time. So the actual impact on Grenada's debt stock is actually zero. So this is signaling the resources that are coming in to fill the gap that will be created as those existing Treasury notes on the regional securities market mature. So in real terms, the sources of financing that are presented here, so the external financing from the World Bank, the DPC2, to the value of $67.5 million. This is for budget support through IDA 19. This is a facility, highly concessional loan that is 0.75% interest with a 10-year grace period over a 40-year repayment time frame. So highly concessional. And these are resources that Grenada is eligible for. Based on its fiscal prudence, these monies would not be made available to us if we were mismanaging our economy. And the World Bank is one of the development partners been working very closely with since 2013, both in terms of the restructuring of our economy over that period and ongoing support that we are eligible for due to our strong fiscal performance and management. So these are resources that are available to us that other countries within the region are not eligible to receive. The other sum is, again, through the World Bank for the Caribbean Regional Air Transport Project, which is for $34.1 million. Mr. President, this was covered in the budget. This is part of the Maurice Bishop International Airport redevelopment project. We're receiving resources from Exim Bank. We're receiving resources from the World Bank to enable us to address the upgrade requirements of the airport. And we spoke at length about why this is the right time for us to be investing and seeking concessionary, highly concessionary loan resources to enable us to upgrade the airport, ensuring it maintains its international standing, upgrades to the runway, upgrades to the terminal building, safety, communication, navigation equipment, all the things that are required to ensure that the airport is kept at international standards. And this is the first major reinvestment in the airport since it opened in 1984. So ensuring that our critical air hub is at the standard it needs to be. And this is the time to do it. It will take somewhere in the region of 2 years for these works to be carried out. And in addition to creating jobs, significant jobs during the construction implementation phase, enables the airport, when it is ready to resume full operations in its new configuration, upgraded, will be in time for the projected uptick in global tourism as the globe gets through this pandemic crisis situation. The other loan facilities under the GEEP Phase 2 project, $40.5 million. And again, Mr. President, we spoke of that throughout the budget presentation over the last 2-3 days. And this is a major upgrading of many of our schools. Somewhere in the region of 20 schools have already been upgraded, refurbished to date. And this is for the second phase, where additional schools, which we outlined, will be constructed and upgraded. So that is the seeking parliamentary approval for the contracting of this loan to enable us to continue the significant investment in our school infrastructure. And to date, with this concessional loan through the Caribbean Development Bank, signals a $100 million investment in our school infrastructure over the course of that GEEP program. So, Mr. President, the only other item on this seeking authorization, is the ECCB credit allocation, long-term credit allocation, and this is for the sum of $35.4 million. And this is a facility that's available to Grenada to access, again, at highly concessional rates. The original credit allocation was at an interest rate of 6.5%, but it's been reduced to 2% to members of the currency union. And this is a flexible financing facility that's available to us if required that we can draw down over the course of 2021 if there are additional expenses, if there are other shortfalls that need to be filled. Other countries within the Union have already accessed this facility, but because of Grenada's tight fiscal management, it's a facility that's available to us that we will draw down if and when required. And the focus of that will be on productive activities. The intention is not to use that for recurrent expenses. So, Mr. President, what we have before us is part of the financing facility. As I said, part of it, half of it is simply a rollover. It is a mechanical transaction. The other portion, the $142 million, are for programs that have already been identified, enhancing the airport, our schools, etc. And it's for these reasons, Mr. President, that I commend this bill for its second reading.
Honourable members, the question proposed is that the Bill 2021 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2020 be read a second time. Senator Garvey, Winston Garvey.
Mr. President, I rise to give my full support to the second reading of the bill that is before us, and to say that everything that we speak of today, and it's been predicated on the fact that COVID-19 has showed up and has affected everything that we do. Everything that we do today has a lot to do with responding to the impacts of COVID. But, Mr. President, I am extremely delighted in the sense that with the loan authorization that the leader of government business just presented to us, with all the concessionary financing and so forth that he just presented, I wouldn't go back there. But it's important to note that $330 million is the value that is being presented of the loan. It's important to note, Mr. President, that despite the fact that the budget this year has a deficit of some $18 million, and we are only asking for $330 million in loan authorization, the reason why we are able to ask for, we're seeking approval, Minister is seeking approval for this low amount, is because within the estimate of revenue and expenditure for 2021, on that grant, there is a number, a figure here of $174 million coming from the NTF. That cushion is the reason why the loan authorization is only $330. Other than that, it would have been $500 million we would have been asking for. But I'm speaking to the wisdom when we introduced a few years ago the CBI program, the Citizen by Investment. And there was this hurrah in the nation and selling of passport and all this sort of negatives. Today we are seeing the benefits, the wisdom of this visionary leadership to move into this direction of the CBI. And we heard from Senator Diallo this morning. With everything that fell through in 2020 because of COVID, the CBI program was the one bright spark that provided resources to this country, and today we are reaping the benefit with a cushion of $174 million in grant to finance the 2021 budget. This is extremely good, Mr. President. Extremely good. Also, within this, we have concessionary financing from the World Bank of some $25 million US. And the reason for this, again, Grenada being I shouldn't say the only one, a few years ago, it was 2016, when we got the first $25 million from the World Bank. 40 years to repay. 10 years grace. So for the first 10 years, you pay nothing. And a 0.75% interest, almost giveaway. We were the only one that qualified. And what created that environment for us was a decision we made in 2013 to restructure the economy. The Structural Adjustment Program established a platform for growth and development. So we were able to work and reduce the debt to GDP ratio by growing the economy, and our GDP was on the upward march. And we succeeded. But you can recall, I want to believe, Mr. President, I can recall, the attack again we got for going to, when we decided to introduce a homegrown structural adjustment program to kickstart the economy. I remember one of the former Minister of Finance saying that we were reckless when we said this is what we're going to do. But again, visionary leadership has brought us to this place, and history will record that in the period of great trials and testings within this country, this administration, this current administration, is always at the helm to lead us through and to take this country out of those deep financial holes. And today, we are here doing this in this period of COVID-19 pandemic. We will overcome. We will succeed. The foundation has been laid. What is needed right now, all hands on deck to make it happen. And we will succeed in 2021 and beyond because of the positive work that has been established. With this, Mr. President, I want to give my full support for the second reading of this bill.
Thank you, Senator Garvey. Senator Steele? Doesn't seem as anybody else wants to contribute.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. So, in closing, the loan facilities that we are seeking to access or have potential access to, as outlined in the authorization bill, will address the budget deficit that needs to be filled and the incoming resources that are required to fund critical programs such as the redevelopment of the airport, such as the upgrading of our schools, and I said that final component, which is the Treasury rollover. And it's for those reasons, Mr. President, I commend this bill for its second reading.
Thank you, Senator Steele. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. All those who have that opinion say aye. To the contrary view, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
The bill for an act shortly entitled 2021 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2020.
Senator Steele.
Mr. President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
The honourable members, the question proposes that the bill be read a third time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be read a third time and passed. All those who are of that opinion say aye, and to the contrary view say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do indeed have it. This bill has been passed.
The bill for an act shortly entitled 2021 Budget Loan Authorization Bill 2020.
Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, I beg to introduce for first reading a bill for an act shortly entitled Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020.
A bill which seeks to amend the Quarantine Act, Cap 271, shortly entitled Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020.
Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the relevant standing orders of the Senate be suspended to enable the bill to be taken through all the stages at this sitting.
Honourable members, the question is that the relevant standing orders be suspended in order to enable this bill, the Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020, to be taken through all of its stages at this sitting. Those who have that opinion say aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, I beg to move the second reading of the bill. Mr. President, as stated before, COVID-19 pandemic is uncharted territory for every country. It has unleashed both global and health emergencies and unprecedented economic crisis of historic magnitude. Our response to it is targeted to saving lives, and by strengthening the health facilities, ensuring that enough frontline workers are in place and trained, and that the necessary medical supplies and equipment are also in place. We also ensure that adequate public awareness information is being presented so the public will be aware as to what needs to be done to protecting themselves. Well, all this, Mr. President, we have seen at some point in time behaviors that is not consistent with the protocols that have been established. And as a result, it has brought undue pressure on the government's purse. The bill before us, the Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020, seeks to amend Section 4 of the Principal Act to insert a new subsection to empower the minister to create offenses and regulations for non-compliance with the regulations and to set the maximum penalty for that may be prescribed for such offense. And Clause 3 seeks to insert a new Section 4A to the Principal Act, which confer on the minister the power to make regulations relating to specifically to the response to COVID without the requirement for confirmation by the House of Representatives. And Clause 4 seeks to amend Section 7.2 to increase the maximum penalty for a fine of from 10,000 and an imprisonment from 6 months to 25,000 and 12 months or 1 year, respectively. We all recall case 25, when for some reason that individual left the quarantine before receiving information as to his status, the response to the test that was taken. And only to realize, after getting into his area, his movements was widespread around the country. At the end of it all, when the result was finally presented, and he finally received the result, he had a positive diagnosis. But at that time, by his movements, 77 persons were in close contact with him. We had one positive case, but all 77, and himself 78, had to be quarantined and to be tested. And to be tested twice to ensure that they were medically cleared. And given that one test, Mr. President, cost 405 EC dollars, that had to come from the state purse for 78 persons. And to do it twice, the bill to the government purse was $63,180. And then we had not breaches, 31 and 32. The movement was not that extensive, but 38 persons were quarantined as a result. And looking at having to test them twice at $405 per test, we're looking at just over 30,000. So for these two breaches, the government had to pay close to $95,000. Monies that could have been used to bring more people on the front line to work, could have been deployed within the Ministry of Health, but had to be used because people breached the quarantine. Fines are imposed on bills because you want it to be a deterrent. So, as it stands, for a person breaching the quarantine, the fine is $10,000 or imprisonment of 6 months. But that didn't matter to me because folks breached quarantine. This bill seeks to increase the penalties, and I think justifiably so, from 10,000 to 25,000, and from 6 months imprisonment to 1 year imprisonment. And I believe this is justified because any breach affects the productivity of the country, affects the smooth operation of this country. And the intention here is to encourage people to obey the protocols. Section 3. Insert a new section 4A to the Principal Act. The power to make regulation in response to COVID-19. Well, what is most important here, Mr. President, is a negative resolution. Because of the seriousness and the gravity of this, you want to give the minister, and the minister is here, minister in cabinet, the ability to make regulations as quickly as possible in response to an emergency as it relates to COVID or any other disease. And in this case here, for the COVID, is to give him the tool to be able to respond as quickly as possible and to establish a regulation, the environment and the platform to collect information and to dispense information and to make it mandatory for masters on the ships or pilots to provide information to the ministry as it relates to epidemiological issues as it relates to the persons you have on board, information about the health status. Those things are important because we have a country to protect. But importantly, Mr. President, most importantly, is to give the minister the ability to respond and respond quickly to establishing those regulations. As we all agree, COVID-19 came in as a thief in the night. And as from the time she came, continued to create panic in the world. Well, COVID-19, he or she have no gender.
I didn't know it had there was a sex to the.
I said she came in as a thief in the night, and it appears that it affected our young ladies, and I didn't want to do that. So COVID is a man, okay? So, no, historically, we men could take it. So he came in as a thief in the night, and it's creating mass havoc and panic. Okay, so gender neutral. So it came in as a thief in the night. The point here, Mr. President, is this. We have to respond to COVID, and in so doing, protecting this piece of rock that is ours. And if we don't, and let me bring in this point. COVID-19 was not budgeted for in 2020. And we had to respond, and we had to find resources to make sure that we mount the adequate response. And as I said here, having the necessary equipment so that our frontline workers can do the job and do it well. Funds had to be found to do this. But it makes it more difficult for us to mount a proper response if our people are not responsible. We are going into the Christmas season, the best time of the year. A time when you let down your guards and you want to have a good time. You can't do it this year. You can't let down your guard. You have to be on guard at all times because COVID is out there. You cannot say, well, we didn't have a death so we could just do what we want. Nobody is aware and knows if COVID is looking around the corner. We have to be on guard at all times. So we must not create the environment to get into any sort of activities that could cause infection. Going back to the Prime Minister's address, curtailing on gatherings and so forth. Yes, it is taken away from the plans that we may have had to having a good time for the Christmas and to enjoy the times with probably the boys and so forth and the girls and maybe just family. But we have to do everything in moderation at this point in time because COVID is there. Mr. President, it's unusual times and it calls for unusual responses. What we would love to do at Christmas time, we are not permitted to do it because COVID is there. But at the end of the day, we want to ensure that we continue to protect the lives of our people in Grenada, Carriacou, Peter Martinique. And this bill here is designed to do just that. So with these few words, Mr. President, I want to commend the bill for its second reading.
That opinion, say aye. Sorry, Senator Cox, you had your... Sorry, I missed your... You have to excuse me, but my normal pair of glasses, one of my lenses fell out.
Oh, thank you.
What I have here is a reading glasses, and I can't see just beyond reading, so I didn't notice your light. So you have the floor. Sorry about that. I reversed the question which is about to be put.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. No need to apologize, you know. I myself, too recently realized, seems like I'm getting there, you know. There is a litmus test that you normally use to know where you are. See if you can thread a needle with naked eyes. And if you're having difficulties, then that is a requirement that you should visit. Then they are specialists, you know. When you have to call somebody to help you thread a needle, know you have problems. Mr. President, I am grateful for an opportunity to make some contribution on this important amendment before us, this bill before us. Mr. President, really and truly, what we are actually trying to do, each one of us, is we, and this government, together with nation, we're trying to save lives. At the same time, trying to lead a normal life. And that is the difficulty before us. How do we try to do everything that we can as we used to, at the same time without creating harm for us? And that is where the difficulty lies. As human beings, we are a creature of habits, and it's difficult to change those habits. Even sometimes we know that we're supposed to wear a mask. Sometimes you forget, sometimes you jump out of the car. As you go to enter the building, you realize, gosh, I forgot my mask. So we understand the challenge in persons getting accustomed to these new behaviors, these new attitudes. But, you know, like everything else, there are some persons who are going to do it deliberately. So we have to, and wherever we can, use every measure to try to sway persons in order to protect everybody. The question is before us, can legislation go far enough to do that? It may not, but we do believe that there is a requirement for us to make every effort, use whatever measures that we have in front of us to make sure that everybody feels safe. So hence the reason why I really support this amendment. This amendment basically just seeks to address two primary things, and I'll go into a little more justification later. But the presenter of the bill did speak to the regulations in terms of being able to respond using this quarantine bill, this new bill that will become an act, to respond to COVID-19, because the quarantine bill, for obvious reasons, when constructed initially, could not preempt that we'll have something called COVID-19. So what we're doing here is actually encapsulating the COVID-19 response within the quarantine bill as another measure for going forward. As you know, this may be with us for a number of years. Hopefully, we address it. The discussion, I believe, in the next 3 to 6 months would not be so much about testing, but it will be more about vaccine. And so those discussions will continue to go forward. Who knows, maybe we might be coming with a bill to treat with vaccine going forward. We don't know. So those are things that we'll have to take it as they come. The second part has to do with infringement of the regulations and the penalties for those offenses. So there is a variation upwards in terms of what the court can charge. So we're moving from 10 to 25,000. I think that is somewhat a hefty deterrent on the pocket, of course. So we hope that's work. And then in terms of imprisonment, not exceeding 1 year. But I think most importantly, why we are making this and continue to make this public appeal, we all have done it in this house since this pandemic met our shores. We continue to reiterate as government. We take this responsibility seriously from the Prime Minister, cabinet members. In every opportunity we get, we continue to make this appeal for every individual to look after themselves, to do everything that you can that is possible to protect yourself in this time. while we as government, we have a responsibility to do what we can, it is clear that we cannot, you do not have a hand on each individual, really and truly. But the most you can do is try to encourage, persuade, but they have that responsibility lies with the individual at the end of the day. And that is the fact. So we believe that this is important. And as it comes to address the borders, the entries into the borders. And one of the reasons why we do that. Now, how our economy operates. Our economy operates and thrive on people moving backward and forward. People being able to trade. We have our local vendors. We have persons who go to other countries, buy stuff, come back here, sell. That is their livelihood. That is what this pandemic has done. It has hampered that to some degree. We have goods for supermarkets, for persons who have businesses here, persons who are involved in small manufacturing. Some of the materials, they have to get it from outside. So we understand that there is a risk in having that movement, those trade taking place. But that is essential for livelihoods to thrive and to thrive successfully. So that is the meat of the matter before us. And hence the reason why those measures from this amendment seeks to try to protect movements within that sphere in terms of ensuring that trade can happen, persons can move, but there are certain requirements in terms of gathering information, giving early notice, what is taking place, who is coming, what you're moving with, and things like that. So that is critical in the event that something do happen, that we can do the necessary tracing to manage this. So, Mr. President, this amendment, while it may seem very small, it's a very significant amendment for us by adding another layer, another tool for the Ministry of Health, and of course, by way of the government of Grenada can respond most appropriately to this pandemic before us. And it's for these reasons I give my full support to this important amendment of the Quarantine Act. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. And on the quarantine bill, let me just add to it. Because, Mr. President, I know that tourism has its part to play in the development of this economy. And let me not hasten to say as well that the diaspora has its part to play in the development of this economy. And sometimes I hope this bill is not unfair to the people in the diaspora or people who is returning on a regular basis. Like I already said, they had made significant contribution, and are still making significant contribution to the development of this country and the economy. Hence the reason why sometimes I get the feeling as though we relax certain protocols where the tourist is concerned, and then we tend to put the hammer on our own who are returning and are always making significant contribution to this country. So where sometimes I get the feeling that the tourists are exempted and our own people are sometimes being treated unfairly in this regard. Again, I just want to make the point that somebody wrote an article, I think it was Ms. Linda Straker, and must give credit where credit is due in terms of the quarantine, the naming of Quarantine Point, which is somewhere quite in 1892, where it was established. They built some buildings there to isolate people and so on from smallpox, yellow fever, malaria, and so on. I think Angus Martin did some work on it as a historian guy. And she mentioned the point that that's where the name came from, Quarantine Point. So if in 1892 that could be established, I noticed that the members on the other side or the government have never really went into that development in terms of establishing a quarantine area or facility since this pandemic has started. Barbados did one in a quick space of time. I have privy to the pictures, and I have information on it. They did probably build a quarantine area probably within the space of a couple of weeks, state of the art too. And they are now even trying to transform it possibly, because it was so good, into probably a possible hospital later on. But we haven't gone in that direction here. I've seen St. Lucia as well, when there were one time of issue of community spread, bus loads of people leaving the facility and so on. We haven't ventured into that. So I'm just making the point. It's a good thing. Maybe we should have gone into that area. I haven't seen we gone into that. But the point is, the people in the diaspora, they play a significant role. I know the senator on the other side, Senator Williams, make mention to the fact that I mentioned the diaspora, but it's just the fact that I'm stressing that the significant economic contribution that these people have made and still making, we need to be careful how we go about that, and bearing in mind that these people are still making significant contribution and bail us out during Ivan and during this pandemic as well. They're still making significant contribution. And these are our own people, and we need to be mindful of that. And that is just what I have to say on that matter.
Just before you take your stance, Senator Noel, there is in fact, from a factual point of view, and I have knowledge of it because I sit on both COVID committee, the committee before and now, there is in fact a dedicated unit, a completely new wing set up extant to the hospital that would deal with hospital COVID cases. And it has its own ICU unit. I think, if I'm not mistaken, I believe there may be either 11 or 15 bed unit there that is separate and distinct from the hospital. That unit occupies what used to be the former CID, what later became the kidney dialysis center, which was incomplete and never used. It was refurbished. It has both private and individual isolation rooms. It is in fact an isolation ward. So from a factual point of view, this government of the state of Grenada has made these arrangements. Obviously, we don't have a unit the size of Barbados, simply because we don't have the size of Barbados economy, etc., but there is such a unit. Secondly, yes, I know of Quarantine Station, which gained its name from when the early outbreak of smallpox. In fact, it was leprosy, I think, that first triggered that isolation center down there. And we do have isolation units here. The St. George's University has made available to the state of Grenada for purposes of an isolation facility or quarantine facility. Its former campus on the Grand Anse Beach that has several rooms on the upstairs, and that is being used, in addition to which the government has rented several other, well, not rented, but has certified by virtue of these facilities meeting the necessary quarantine standards. And these are private sector quarantine facilities that has been approved, and individual persons who have to go into quarantine can elect to go into a private quarantine setting. And some hotels have been so certified and are prepared, the workers have been prepared and so on, how to handle patients like those, and so on. And for those persons who cannot afford and can prove that they don't just have the funds, right, there is that facility provided by the university. In addition to which, because most of the dorms at the university are empty, the university has also made some of those available for purposes of quarantining, especially because I can tell you, I mean, my daughter as a medical doctor was one of the doctors in the COVID infectious unit. In fact, she was one of a limited number of doctors there. And she had to quarantine at a facility, a hotel that the government had to rent in order to put them there. So I'm just talking factually what the facts are. And maybe members of the House are not conversant or acquainted with those facts. So I just thought I would make it known. I'm not entering a debate, but for the benefit of all, from a factual point of view, I'm just saying what currently does exist. Yes?
Okay, so.
Sincere, yes. St. Clair, sir. I always get this mixed up. I'll get it right one of these days.
Don't worry. Thank you so much, Mr. President, for accommodating my comments on this. I would say it's a historic bill. Historic not necessarily for this part, but the bill is in its entirety from the parts that we don't have here today. Because I sit here and I say, but did we have a bill, I don't know, to show, maybe for the same leprosy and those things back then? Did we have a bill, I know, to show, Ms. Williams, Katisha, maybe?
Yeah,
I mean, there might be something on the books. There might not have been a bill for that.
There
was.
There's public health laws.
Okay, so this is it.
These matters.
Okay, well, you see, and that's the beauty of being new, so I'm learning the process. And it's for history because sometimes a lot of persons in the country are not aware that you say, when they coming out with this thing again? And so I stand here because I am personally affected. I mean, in our work in the nutmeg and the cocoa, I think the whole country knows that, our farmers and so on, our vegetable, everybody, especially from the food end, are affected from a lot of different angles. From one, in terms of unable to sell their products as they would like to, especially in the export market, the fisher folks and so on. They're still affected. In fact, only yesterday I had to go to Guave to get some fish, and the guy said, this is good fish, because, the America. So what you're getting here is what really should have gone away. You see? So it comes back to the point of, so I had to buy, I don't know if I got a special price, but maybe if we had some agro-processing facility, we might be able to add some value to it and have it at some stage, might be able to ship it out and get money along the road. But the point is that, again, when you get stuff, our farming community, fisher folks, we still have to feed our nation again. So they're in a catch-22. They need to have funds to continue the trade. They need to think about their own livelihood. Yet still, they have, and they know that obligation and sort of moral responsibility to ensure that we can consume. I say this on the backdrop that from my constituents, we don't want to go down in that whole problems anymore of these restrictions and so on. And so whatever can be done to make the penalties tougher, make it more enforceable, so as to make their lives and all of our lives eventually better, we will support. Of course, implementation, we know, is always an issue. And of course, the police, we commend and all of those things, but we want you to, I would say, do your work. Because this is your arm of doing the work. Now, I have a few comments I want to make specifically to this, that I'm not too sure if this was considered or if it's just another part, and maybe the next month or two as a situation arises, we will modify again. But I want to comment that when I read this, I'm seeing a lot about the ship and the airplane, and so it's about a lot of coming in, because I know we want to protect our borders. But we need to also realize that after you come in, and we have seen that, and I stand corrected to the process and protocol because I've never been out to come back in during this time. But I learned that you come in and you have to be checked and tested to make sure that you're okay. I'm not too sure if that is 100%. However, when you come in, you must go into some facility of quarantine, for which our president has clearly outlined the process and facilities available. And while you are in this facility, some testing will take place at some time later on to see if you get the all clear that you can leave. And this is where my concern starts. So I am interpreting that this bill here, as presented, is saying, if I leave, if I escape this quarantine facility, or if I was given the permission to get home quarantine, because I understand an extreme situation is possible that that could happen, and that's okay. But if you are in there and you break the quarantine, this is what I'm interpreting this to achieve. So I'm waiting for the result, and the result has not come yet, but I break the quarantine, and I'm going to be charged this monies. I have no problem with the amount of monies of the 25,000 and the 1 year in prison. My concern is, while I'm in quarantine, I wait for my test. So I might be tested and say, oh, he's positive. So I'm in Shublu, Granan's facility, and I was tested on whatever the day is as prescribed. And I didn't break it. I'm waiting, I'm a good guy. And the results come, you're positive. So based on the protocol, if I'm getting it right, stand corrected, I need to remain there, and then there will be some follow-up to check me again to make sure I get the all clear before I can go. However, somewhere in that waiting that I know that I'm positive and I'm there, I behave bad. I say, you see me, I can't take this thing anymore. I know I have it, but I need to go. So I break the curfew and the quarantine actually, and I go. So I knowingly have it. Well, it is the correct word, because it's not a he or she. And I go by my good friend Andre, Senator Faliba. I say, "But watch, from Ladig, I come out and eat some food." And it so happens, sometime down the road, we discover Andre got it. We do the tracing and realize, no, but this guy is supposed to be in quarantine. He broke it for a night, he come back. How did he get it? This person, in this context, to me is not catered for here. It's catering for, we're making the assumption that all who comes in would be negative, so don't worry about that other part. But as Senator Diali said clearly this morning, we are living in a time of uncertainties and many possibilities, and that is a possibility. And so I think this person should have that's the person who willfully went over, so it's me. I went over, should be fined at a much higher rate, because I knowingly went and do that. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, and I say I'm not a liar, even if I play around it sometimes, individuals with the HIV committing such matters, I think, can be subject to some sort of penalty. And so it's along that sort of line I was thinking. In fact, when I read, there's a word here that says danger. And danger means something to be scared. It means there is some, and that is why we are wearing our mask, because there is danger. You're armed. So the COVID is like imagine you have a knife or a gun and you're infected. So people right now, in fact, it was said yesterday, I think maybe if I said it on Noel, so I said it, Luis, regarding some situation where the healthcare had to come in and coach the workers because they were scared. And so I think that someone who is infected, is certified, and they are aware, and the ministry will have said to them, you're certified. Should they in any way, because they should be in quarantine, so I don't say should they be anywhere wrong, because they should be in quarantine. The fact is that once they go out and they create that infection, then I think that they should have a different fine, which is much higher. I don't know. I'm not telling you to reduce what you have here, but I think it should be more, because it's like I come into you with my open hands and I just give you 2 cuffs. Versus I having a cutlass coming on the road. The jurors will see it different because you have a motive. And this must be addressed. And I understand Senator Noel's point about let's not get the diaspora scared because of it sounds like an infringement, a sort of restriction. But when we put this part to it, I think it makes it more fair. And in fact, we are not there yet because I understand it's cluster spread that is happening and not community spread. At a community spread level, we have to be catering for these things there because it will have to be rapid operations, and it doesn't mean that we have to come back here quickly to pass a bill, to make this little adjustment of 2 lines again. Okay? So I would like us to look at the second thing regarding this is that, and I'm not too sure if it's there, if that's the interpretation. So I'm stand guided that section on page 4 of the bill, G, item G, speaks about authorizing the making of charges and providing for the recovery of expenses. And I trust that what that means is that should I not only, so that's one charge, but should I now cause Andre, Senator, my friend, to be infected, and he has problems down the road, cannot walk, livelihood affected, or maybe I would have gone in a business place, in a shop to get some goods, and I cause his business to close down or something like that. This infected person should have some responsibility in this regard, because they know. I don't know, you don't know, they know. And so if G covers that, I'm okay. And if G covers that also, I want to further get some clarification. What sort of penalties, charges is associated with that? And I don't think it's penalties in the form of going to prison, because going to prison doesn't put food on the table. It doesn't get the business go back up and running. It doesn't, the loss of jobs of persons having to stay home for many days, it doesn't cut it. So these are my comments, and I strongly support this because we cannot have more disruptions. Right now, from where I sit at the Nutmeg Association in particular, the fisher folks and all of those who are exporting, I'm here and I'm worried, and I'm just trying to pray that we can get certain things done before it gets to the situation that we don't want to, because it would be hard. I know the government is making a lot of tries and commitment, finding monies, all this stimulus package to help with the labor and so on. It's tough, and we have to do as much as we can from where we sit to send a very strong message in this regard, but also to enforce and implement to its fullest. So these are my contributions to this point.
St. Clair. Senator Sincere, no, I think I have this, get it correct.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, like Senator St. Clair and my colleagues on the other side, I stand to support this bill. However, I do have, and I'm placing my concern here because I have an emergency, I need to go outside. I read the Principal Act, and the Principal Act states that the CMO, let me quote it here, the person from time to time holding the office of the Chief Medical Officer shall be the quarantine authority. So I am asking here, just for clarity, again, I'm not the legal mind, so Senator Williams may be able to clarify this for me here, because the Act says establishment of quarantine authority, that's Section 3, and appointment of staff. For the purpose of this Act, there shall be a quarantine authority. 2 says the person from time to time holding the office of the Chief Medical Officer shall be the quarantine authority. So I am wondering here if we're repealing that and the minister is going to become the quarantine authority, or it's in addition. It's a totally different thing. Okay, so we're simply amending Section 4 and adding. Okay, that being the case, I have another concern because basically we're dealing with the Quarantine Act, and the amendment speaks specifically to COVID-19. And I'm wondering here if it doesn't make more sense to say public health emergencies as opposed to COVID-19, because public health emergencies, COVID-19 will fall under that, instead of having a specific public health emergency mentioned. So, Mr. President, those are just my, other to that, I think the bill is a good one, and I fully support the fine that is there, because we have to understand that public health crises are no joke. We have to take them seriously, and persons have to abide by the protocols and procedures that are set. Thank you very much.
Chair. Senator Cox. Not Cox, sorry, Senator Garvey.
No, one is C and one is G. Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, let me start by thanking the members for the contribution. And I just want to start with the last one first, though Senator Sincere will be back when I speak to it. But I want to thank Minister Cox for the historical context he put to this, and the value of it as it relates to ensuring that we capture everything that is coming into the country, be it goods, be it persons, and the responsibility of masters and pilots to ensure that they provide all the information to the relevant authorities as it relates to whatever consignment that they have in their care. I listened to Senator Noel, and I just want to lay the what fears you have laid aside to know that This bill will be no respecter of persons, and everyone will be governed according to the legislation. So it means that our diaspora nationals should not fear anything, in the sense that there will be one standard for them and one standard for other persons. No. The bill will establish this in which you will have to follow, and that's what it is. So you're just ensuring that the bill will just be clear and straightforward, and everyone will be governed according to the dictates of the bill. As it relates to Senator Sinclair, and the Quarantine Act as it is speaks to what you were talking about. A person knowingly is infected and may decide probably to have a little party, celebration. If that is the case, one is the police can, and the bill says, not here but in the Quarantine Act, the police can enter into his property without even a warrant, and to shut the party down and take the necessary measures to curtail or to curb the possibility of spread and so forth. So that is there, it is covered. We're specifically dealing with two issues here, but it is there in the Quarantine Act, the Public Health Act, I should say. And the reason why we are making this amendment here, part of it is a negative resolution we're talking about, so that the minister does not have to come back into Parliament. That will even take up the time and create the environment probably for the spread. The minister can make regulations without coming back to Parliament, and to ensure that we protect the people as much as possible via those regulations. As it relates to the issue Senator Sinclair raised, which the two of them, the first one is the amendment here speaks to do two things. The Quarantine Act speaks to the role of the CMO. This is not what we're doing here. We're speaking to, as I said, amending 2 and 3, and that is to ensure that information is provided at this point in time to the authorities as it relates to, one, persons who you have in your, be it on the ship or on the aircraft, or whatever consignment you have, goods, whatever it is, those information must be provided for. And the other issue that Senator Sinclair raised, as it relates to she was concerned as to be it a specific disease that the bill was capturing, why we didn't look to probably amend the entire Public Health Act. Andrew saying no. Because within the Act, every disease will have to be named so that regulation will be specific to it. So all what you spoke of before, be it chickenpox, leprosy, all of them are a part of the Public Health Act as it currently stands. What we're doing here at this point is to introduce COVID-19. It was not there before, it is novel. So now you have specific information as it relates to COVID. And going forward, regulations will be made re-COVID, but it will be a part of the Public Health Act. So So as it is right now, based on what we have before us, everything that needs to be covered right now has been covered, and we do believe this will give us the minister the necessary authority to introduce regulations that will govern as it relates to COVID-19. But let us not be, in any way, let us not forget the seriousness of COVID before us. And what is important for us to ensure that the measures that have been imposed is to, one, save lives. And that's the primary objective, to save lives. And it is not to restrict or to take away civil liberty or your freedom of movement. We are faced with an issue right now that has the ability to decimate your economy. When we look at what is happening in some of the first world countries, with how many thousands of people being dead as a result of COVID, we have to make sure that we protect our people. And in protecting our people, this amendment has been brought here today. So with these words, I want to commend the bill for its second reading.
The question is, second time. Honorable members, the question is that the bill be read a second time. Those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary view, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Bill for an Act shortly entitled Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020.
Senator Garvey.
Mr. President, I beg to move that the Senate resolve itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause.
Honorable members, the question is that this Senate resolves itself into a committee of the whole Senate to consider the bill clause by clause. Those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. The contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it. Honorable members, the House is now resolved into a committee to consider the bill clause by clause.
Clause 2, Amendment of Section 4 of Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question to be considered is Clause 2, Amendment of Section 4 of the Principal Act. Those who have that opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Clause 3, Insertion of new Section 4A to Principal Act.
Honorable members, the question under consideration is Clause 3, insertion of a new Section 4A to the Principal Act. All those who of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Mr. Chairman.
Sorry.
I believe that was the point I was making before I...
You can sit down.
I'm so accustomed to standing up. So yes, Section 4A1 says specifically COVID-19. So that was the point that I was making, whether that should be changed to public health emergencies, which in effect would encompass COVID-19.
Okay, go on.
Senator Garvey.
Okay, I was waiting for you to return to answer to it. Yes, the public health bill at this moment captures all emergencies. COVID is not there. So COVID is now introduced. And the reason why we will have COVID is to ensure that regulations will capture COVID-19, but it will be a part of the Public Health Act.
Mr. Chairman, while I understand the justification perhaps my thinking may be wrong or flawed, but maybe we should have been looking at the Public Health Act and this act together and added the COVID-19 there, because really and truly you have to remember when the Public Health Act was established, was put into effect, we did not have COVID-19, very true, but really and truly from a public health standpoint, I do not see the need to identify specific public health emergencies. Because again, let me say this for the benefit of everybody, there will be emerging and re-emerging communicable diseases. We may go outside today, we're dealing with COVID, and tomorrow we may have something else, which means that we may have to come back in and now make something that's specific to this new infectious disease. Simply saying public health emergencies covers all of that. And I get the reason, because COVID-19 wasn't there. But that does not mean you have to mention COVID-19 here, because it isn't in the Public Health Act. Public health emergencies, or crises, if you want to call it that, covers everything that would emerge.
Chair.
Senator Cox.
Chair, while I understand the reasoning by Senator Sincere, there is, for a number of specific reasons why certain diseases are named. The responses for each particular disease outcome is different. As such, regulations are going to be specific to how you respond to those. Some disease you don't require to wear a mask. You may not require the police to go into your residence. And it may, I believe, have certain legal ramifications by being able to specifically to allow the authorities to respond particularly. So by covering everything under one umbrella, there might be some level of loophole by not speaking specifically as to what you're responding to. You see, I understand clearly what she's trying to say, but you can come to my house and say responding to a public health disaster. So I'll ask you, what is it? What public health disaster? I don't know anything about that. So some of the responses are specific for that very said reason, because some of the actions are very intrusive in their nature, and you don't want to subject a police officer or somebody of the law to exercise those authorities with the necessary protections in that regard. So it doesn't take away as to how we are addressing it in this regard with that level of specificity. It doesn't take away anything from it. But I do understand, but that is the main reason why it is important that you respond with clear indication as to why we're doing this, what the regulations are responding to. So I just want to clarify that.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, again, I understand what Senator Cox is saying, but this bill is seeking to allow the minister to make regulations as it relates to quarantine. Quarantine under any circumstances. The regulations and orders would then specify. It doesn't say that it's giving the minister the authority, and that's where I'm saying it. It's giving the minister the authority to make regulations under the Quarantine Act as it relates to whichever public health emergency. So it may be SRO 20, and SRO 20 would say COVID regulations. It may be SRO 21, and it may speak to something else. But it's just giving the minister the authority, based on what I read, to make regulations under the Quarantine Act.
Mr. Chair, just to rebut, and I think you just said it, there must be something that the minister must make reference to. So you cannot make reference to a particular disease or condition
that is not referenced somewhere in the Act. It must be referenced in the Act for regulations to speak to it. And that is the catch right there.
Senator Cox, be very careful what you're saying now. This says quarantine. Persons have been quarantined. The regulations before were not couched in this Act. All right.
Let me see.
Okay.
Let me see. I'm not entering into the debate, but let me see if I could be helpful here. My understanding of what Senator Sincere is saying is simply that if you amend in the original Act, you should give the original Act all-embracing powers to deal with any specific emerging health emergency. And she is completely right. Virologists are now telling us that while we've only had a pandemic of the corona family of this scale 100 years ago, we can expect the frequency of a visitation of diseases by viruses to increase. And they have identified a number of reasons why this will happen. What she seemed to be suggesting is that rather than have to come back each time to adjust the Principal Act, the amendment we're now making, we make it so all-embracing, and that the minister has powers to declare SR&Os, which will then fit the specific emergency. So we would not be facing the trouble that you have identified, especially where enforcement is necessary and the arm of the state dealing with enforcement, the police have to act. They'll be acting in accordance with SR&O, and you don't have to come and make an amendment to the Principal Act, because there will be emanating powers where an emergency arises that the Chief Medical Officer, who is the authorizing officer under all of this, can so declare. So it is not something that will be done willy-nilly. Because you're quite correct. There's no need, if someone have HIV, for you and I to wear a mask. You may have to wear a condom, but not a mask. So the circumstance, and that's a virus, by the way, but it's a virus that manifests itself in terms of its medical effects on the body in a different way. Its transmissibility is different. The way in which it is transmitted is different, but it's a virus nonetheless. And I think that's the point that is being made here. I hope I'm summarizing, I hope I'm just clarifying what you would have said for consideration. I'm on neither side of the debate, because I sit on neither side of the debating team. But that is what I capture her to be saying. And I would suggest that it is worthy of some contemplation.
Yeah.
Now,
Just
one second.
sure.
Now, Senator Sincere, the way in which these things happened and the drawn-out nature of parliamentary procedure, the fact we are coming to the close of the year, the fact that we have had people who have broken quarantine, including people who have been trained in the field of medicine and ought to know better. This is not a case of a youngster who is enthusiastic, have no idea of the nature of this disease, and is just driven by youthful energy to have done something. Among those who have breached quarantine, including a guy who was sneaking up into a quarantine quarter to keep a date with his lover, and who ended up breaking his leg or his hip. Quite an appropriate punishment, in my view, by nature, I would suggest. As different from somebody who has been a student of medicine, qualified and practicing, who feels, small island people, black people, really, blah, blah, and so on. And the reason why I'm saying this, Senator, is the validity of your point is not being dismissed if there's an urgency for proceeding with the bill as is. And I'll tell you why. Because if not, the bill has to go back to the House. In the meantime that it goes back to the House, there is a window that's open there for us to have a repeat of what has happened before. So it's a case in which half a loaf, right? And I'll tell you something about the old sages of yesteryear. Half a loaf is better than none. Right, so it is better to half plug. The ideal thing is to plug the hole completely of the dam. But if you're unable to do that in one go, and you plug half, then you cut the loss of water by half, or whatever it is the dam is holding, which is certainly better than doing nothing at all. So I'm saying to you, if the government side wishes to take on board for further deliberation what you have, and it requires an amendment to be made here, that now has to wait. The Governor General can't proclaim this. Clerk can't send it to be gazetted. It has to go back to the House for those changes to take place, which means there will be a window of opportunity. All right, so I just want to bear this in mind. And I put the question back in the committee for debate between the both sides.
Yeah.
I would yield, Mr. Chairman, considering your latter statements.
Well, this is not a coercive engagement,
I agree. I
I'm
understand.
not engaging by coercion. I'm just saying this is a consequential effect, all right? And I can't speak for the government side, but because I know the process, I put it out there. I think Senator Cox is quite capable of speaking for himself. He don't need me to speak for him at all. And in many respects, he's quite better than me. I wouldn't venture to speak for him. So I just put it out there for the committee to consider on both sides.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I just wanted to close with, in terms of what you said, to go further to explain, because of what the member has recommended, that would require for even more complete redo of this amendment, and not just to the House. It will have to go back to drafting, because if you have a wide heading, obviously the instructions therefore will have to be broader to cover what imagine or what you may perceive that may happen in this regard. So you are correct, and while her suggestion is one that has merit, because of the construct of this amendment, it will not apply appropriately at this time. So I just wanted to strengthen that.
Which gives me an opportunity to say something at committee, and again to make an appeal. I understand the urgency of these things, but if we could have a standing committee, joint committee of both houses, because we are getting very good ideas coming from the other side, ideas of quality.
Correct.
So
Mr. Chair,
if we could have a joint standing committee in which, when these bills are done,
just to reiterate,
for citing,
Yeah.
because as I said to you before, the best ideas are an amalgam. And I believe it's Senator Sinclair who made that point. Is it Senator Sinclair? Somebody made that point this morning. Oh, no, Senator Williams this morning in her contribution talks about the strength and qualities of steel. Right? So when you take the iron and you heat it, and I think you add some other thing to it, and then you get It's a stronger, more durable. And I'm saying inside of this house, there is so much intellectual capital, all right, that we ought to tap into that capital. Now, I'm making a distinction between, well, I'm going to be a little bit facetious here, but I'm serious. Between what I will call negative mischief and objective engagement. And this is an objective engagement. It may sound critical, but it is not. And what I would like us to be able to do is to harness the intellectual capital that is here, so that if we have an opportunity to be able to just pull a quick committee together, look, this is a bill that's coming, and get the views from each side quickly, we can make the amendments, and then we can have better legislation that will be better for all of us and the country as a whole. I just thought I would throw that in again to re-emphasize the need for joint engagement on these matters. Yes?
Right.
Senator Lewis.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And well, I just intervened to give support to the issue of taking the half-aloof approach, because it's a discussion I want to have further with at least Senator Sincere. Because if we take a broad approach, there are certain concerns that I may have in relation to the power of the minister, because it has been said that for each particular challenge, for instance, COVID-19, or be it some new pandemic, there may be certain specifics that may not apply to each other. I would be very concerned about a broad brush approach. Yes? And that is why I'd want to have some further discussion with you on that matter, right? Bearing everything in mind. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, I just want to, I was not privy to the discussions, or what your contribution to the discussion. So I'm not sure if what you have said was totally in support of what Senator Sincere would have said. But the Quarantine Act establishes specific information or protection for the borders of your country. The Public Health Act gave us the ability to put into regulations the wearing of masks and those other stuff. What we're asking here, what we're seeking to do by this amendment, is to ensure that we protect the borders of the country. So whoever is coming in, whatever goods or service items that is coming in, they are under the regulation that the minister would establish. Other than that, then we don't have no need. If we were to broaden the scope of the Public Health Act, then there is no need for the Quarantine Act. So with this, Mr. President, I am happy for the ventilation that was given, but we would like to move on, barring whatever, forgetting what was said before, and give credence to what is in the but at least, moving it aside, but at least in the back of our mind, I want to endorse the suggestion that was made by the chair, that there could be, if you want to say bipartisan, or a committee established with members from both sides of the House in discussing matters going forward as it relates to bills that will be introduced. And I know you're an advocate, Mr. Chair, for having the first reading of a bill, and then give the opportunity for consultation and those sort of ventilations, so that when the bill re-emerges for the second reading, we would have had probably some counsel But whatever would be there would be informed by a wider consultation and so forth. But with this, I want to commend that we proceed.
Yeah. Well, I think Senator Sincere made that concession, you know. And we have to be clear, there are some...
I was not here, that's what I'm saying, I was not privy.
yeah.
Yes.
No, she because I think the senator understood. There are some bills which are very urgent, and this is a very urgent bill because there's a gap that we need to close. It's a very urgent bill, there's a gap that needs to close. And there are bills which you will have to take it through all of its stages. You may not have the first reading and then put it up on the website and wait for people to comment and then we have a public hearing. But that's what I'm saying is, if we have a joint committee, then it is very easy for a joint committee in the current construct of technology to be sent the bill and say, well, look, this is a bill that's coming. Could you please read it overnight? We have a Zoom meeting at 7 in the morning to get your views on the bill, and we could engage and do it that way and get it up and going. So the bill, when it comes and is taken through all of its stages, because there's some bills really that, quite frankly, we can't wait. There are parliaments that are known to convene at midnight in order to pass a bill to get it in effect. In fact, in a great Taoist strike of 1958, that's what happened in the legislature, you know. The legislature met at 10 o'clock in the night, passed the Essential Services Act, and banned some activities that were going to take place at 7 the following morning. So parliaments have done things like that. So it's not unusual. But she has made the concession, and I think we can move on. So could we just wind up the committee stage of this bill? I think if there's no further debate, yes.
Clause 3, insertion of new section 4A to Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is clause 3, insertion of the new section 4A to the Principal Act, forms part of the bill. All those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes do have it.
Clause 4, amendment of section 7 of Principal Act.
Honourable members, the question is clause 4, amendment of section 7 of Principal Act to form part of the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
Clause 1, short title.
Honourable members, the question is clause 1, short title, forms part of this bill. Those who have that opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary say nay. I think the ayes have it, the ayes do have it.
Mr. Chair, I beg to move that the Senate resume and the chairman of the committee report progress on the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the Senate resumes and the chairman of the committee reports progress on the bill. Those who have that opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it, the ayes do have it. Honourable members, the House now resumes. Honourable members, it's my pleasure to report that the bill was considered by a committee of the whole Senate, and notwithstanding very lively discussion, was passed without amendment. Senator Gawi?
Mr. President, I beg to move that the chairman's report be adopted.
As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. To the contrary view say nay. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. Senator Gawi.
Mr. President, I beg to move the third reading of the bill.
Honourable members, the question is that the bill be ready third time. Honourable members, the question is that the bill be ready third time and passed. All those who are of that opinion say aye. To the contrary opinion say nay. I think the ayes have it. The ayes do have it.
A bill for an act shortly entitled Quarantine Amendment Bill 2020.
This bill has succeeded and has passed.
Item 16, public business. Item 17, adjournment.
Senator Lewis, Andre Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you very much.
Let me just remind colleagues, according to standing order, it's 10 minutes. I'll tell you the exact standing order here. It's 10 minutes on the adjournment. On the motion for the adjournment of the Senate, any senator may rise and speak on any matter of public importance or urgency up to a limit of 10 minutes. Senator Lewis, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. And in keeping with my goodly friend on the other side, in terms of a curveball, I just thought I should rise first. And the first thing I want to do, Mr. President, and I just ask for consideration for this contribution to be deducted, not be deducted from my 10 minutes after I've done that. I really want us to congratulate, no, my brother, still, I just want us to congratulate the clerk, comrade, but I'm saying comrade because of where I had come from, that's Andrew Augustine, on the following. And then I guess you'd agree with me not to take it out from my time. The clerk, our clerk, has become the president of the governing board of UNESCO's International Institute for Higher Education in Latin America and the Caribbean. Yes, it is a strategic arm of UNESCO devoted to the transformation of the education sector in the region, essentially a policy-making body, and he served as the vice president of the board from 2018. So I think that's something that we should recognize them for. I stand on that, yes. My personal congratulations to you, my brother. Labour has always indicated our willingness to cooperate. In this period, it's extremely more important and urgent. It has to be two ways. COVID must not be used as an opportunity by some employers to break the rules and then try to blame Labour. And I guess we could all agree on this. So, for instance, where collective agreements call for dialogue, the process of retrenchment, if there's a discussion on retrenchment with the union, it must be completed with the union. And we must not make efforts to go behind the union back to try to reach agreements. I'm just saying this, for this will prevent some of the problems that we may run into. And those who are involved in law will understand that if you are the representative of someone in the court, how these things occur. Principle is important to abide by those things just generally. So we give our commitment, just as a general point, and just as a saying, it is also important to note that in forging this working unity that is extremely important in this period, always been important, but more so than ever, that any attempt to stroke fear or imply threat or to cast blame, whether preemptively or so, in most instances, can only sometimes inflame the enthusiasm or the situation. So we need to be guided by this as we respect each other. And I'm using this appeal to call on all employers, the labor movement also, but all employers, that whenever there is a problem or concern that you may have that has a reason, let's do engagement. It is not about a power relation, that things are tight and people are afraid to lose their jobs, so I can do someone what they want. We must respect the dignity of the human being. So I'm just calling for the following of procedures on all matters. I want to also, at this time, once again, empathize with all the workers who have been impacted and citizens who have been impacted by COVID, and in particular with the recent cluster at Sandals, and to make a specific request that anyone who has been impacted and has to be quarantined or whatever should not suffer any loss of income, should not suffer any loss of benefits. I want to end, so I wouldn't use the 10 minutes, because this is a period really for us to work together. And that's why and that's why I decided to start first, to send that message. And send this message because we genuinely believe so. I know many times attempts have been made. Labor is always easy to pull down, right? Workers are always the first to be called upon to make sacrifice. And because what we have is our ability to speak out so that people can hear, we don't sit in the boardroom and make the decisions. So when the decisions are made in the boardroom, the public is not aware of it. The public becomes aware of those decisions when we bring it to the public. So for those of us who have influence on those who make decisions, let's be guided by this. I take this opportunity to wish everyone all the very best for this season. This is a season that is not normal, that is not as we are accustomed with. And whatever we do, try to avoid getting involved in crowds. Try to avoid being exposed unnecessarily. Wear your mask. Follow the health professionals. And I'm requesting of the health professionals to be guided by the science, as they have always done. And therefore, in addressing national issues, stick to the science, because anything that impacts Grenada, and I'm seeing what is happening in the region, I'm seeing some of the talks both in the US, because remember Sandals is an international company. I've seen what has been said in Jamaica. I'm seeing what is said in different places. And therefore, we all need to pull ourselves together. We all have equal responsibility, but there are some of us who have more responsibility based on where we sit in terms of the authority. So Labour give that commitment as usual, to keep working in the interests of all. But please, let us do it with mutual respect. So everyone, have a very good Christmas, have a very good New Year, safe as possible. To all my colleagues, the clerks, the officers, my colleagues on the other side, my colleagues here, I wish us all the very best. To you and your family, and to all the workers of the country.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. Mr. President, I too want to congratulate the clerk on his big post. and to thank Mr. President through you, as the presiding officer, the Parliament for accommodating us throughout this period. They have worked well. I know that when we were having meetings here earlier in the year, they were here making sure that everything is in place, we abide by the protocols, things like that. So just want to thank the staff of the Parliament for the work that they have been doing to accommodate members throughout the course of this year. And as always, they have done a remarkable job, including the members of the Royal Greater Police Force who stand guard here inside the chamber and outside. We want to thank them as well. Mr. President, I want to just thank express some thanks to the Prime Minister and my other cabinet colleagues for giving me the opportunity to perform this new portfolio that I'm in, and for having the confidence in me to steer the ministry going forward for 2021 as we have a mammoth task ahead of us, I really want to register my thanks in that regard. Mr. Prime Minister, Mr. President, I want to, maybe that might be a signal. I want to recognize a few very important. I do have a serious recollection of where we were in March and where we are now, and because I had an intimate relationship in what is taking place in the background, I think it is prudent to recognize a number of countries who have really helped us to get where we are now, not in any order of priority, but countries that I know that made significant contribution to Grenada during this period. I think it's important that I recognize them in this sitting. I think it's critical that we do. The Italian government, they have contributed significantly, especially in the area towards Nawasa, development of our infrastructure. I just want to recognize them. The United States government, they have given significantly supporting the police in particular during this period. The United Kingdom, they have contributed as well. Mr. President, the People's Republic of China, the people and government of Cuba, Venezuela, Mr. President, and all our colleagues in the region, they have supported in some way. When we run out of stuff, we could have made a call to Dominica, make a call to Trinidad, and so I want to recognize CARICOM, our CARICOM brothers and sisters. Mr. President, I want to single out not a country, but an organization that has helped us, really help us. That is the Canadian banknote. I mean, they have, we could have just placed a call and they just roll out their credit card and get stuff for us. So that was something that we want to put on record. We want to thank them for their contribution in this regard. Mr. President, you know, there is this quiet institutional, national institution that does so much for Grenada. But oftentimes, when we hear of them, is either some issue or some kind of controversy or something. We do not hear enough of the good and the contribution that the national lotteries have been making to the development of this nation, and they have contributed significantly to our fight against COVID. So I just want to register that. With that, Mr. Chair, I want to thank my family, of course. You know, I had to ask for permission to come here this morning. I didn't want to say it out loud, but I normally have to ask for permission every day. So I just want to thank my wife, my family for the support, and of course, the colleagues here. It's a pleasure to be part of this Senate in this country. Part of this government at this point in time. I think it's a true privilege, and I'm happy to be here sharing this experience with everybody. So I want to wish you all the best for the holidays. It's going to be an unusual one, but we implore that person be safe as much as possible. And of course, we look forward to a new year. It's going to require work from each and every one of us to ensure that we achieve the objectives that we set, not only for ourselves and our families, but what we set for our country. So with these few words, I just want to say thank you very much, Mr. President.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Mr. President. And of course, I take this opportunity to stand here to speak on a few matters. One, of course, we want to recognize, and I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Senator Bola, Senator Steele that spoke about women. And of course, we are aware of our women agriculture group, Ms. Marisho, Teresa Marisho, and her team, the Grand Rock women, and they are supported heavily by the ICA, and there's a regional organization called the, and this is a group of women farmers, agro-processors involved in the agriculture industry, and they have different linkages with some of our major hotels procuring vegetables and other poultry and so on. Of course, I stand and I say this because this year, and only a few days ago, to be exact, they would have celebrated their 20th year of existence. So sometime, you know, we do have good examples in this country, but as we are seeing, it's the women. So it's something that even a lot of the organizations, we need to look at going forward. How do we involve the women to keep those things going? Sometimes the men might be there to do the hard work, but the women keep the fabric connected. And of course, by saying that by extension, if you look at the whole agriculture sector, whilst a lot of men and male might have their names on the land papers and all this stuff, the women does a lot of managing the affairs of selling and marketing, and they tend to have a much better connection, and that is proven in various parts of the world, in various sectors, not only in agriculture. So what we need to also look at in our whole speaking moving forward is not only about the youth per se, but the youth women, because they need to we need to learn from them, all of us as our male counterparts. So that's the first thing I want to say, and I want to, by extension, use this opportunity to give good regards to all our farming community, our fisher folks, that despite all that is happening, the world is not going to end in the morning. I don't know if I have the powers to say that, but the signal doesn't say that, because we have just made great plans for 2021, and this is the encouraging part. And they say that where there is a will, there is a way, and God will always allow good things to happen. So I say this to say that all our farmers, fisher folks, the whole group within that whole food supply, don't be daunted despite what you may think. Behind every dark cloud, they say there is a silver lining. But it has to take motivation and trust as to what the future will bring. So I want us to ensure that we can provide good, healthy food for our nation during this time, asking our nation to, again, I made a call previously through a press release, to let us support and buy local, especially in this time. It is a healthy choice. It will support our local economy. It will keep the money in Grenada. So that is the next call I want to make. I want to say further that we all need to keep healthy. And healthy, sometimes people say if you have a little bit of size like me, you're not healthy. But size is not about healthy. Healthy is about, as Senator Lewis says, is about the science. You know, what is your blood pressure? What is your blood sugar? And all of those different things. This is what makes you good, because you can have a big, 3-gallon, 3 liters vehicle, but it's not performing. Whereas you could have maybe a 600 liters and it's performing good because it's healthy, it's well tuned up. So I say this to say that let us tune up our bodies with good food and all of those things so that we can be able to move into 2021 with good energies. I say also that we need to ensure that we start having forward planning, because from the farming sector, we know that a cabbage or tomatoes will not be ready in January the 1st or in February the 2nd. So we have a lot of preparatory work. So while some persons might be relaxing during these holidays, a lot of work by the farmers will be going into place so that there is food on the table come January, right? So as Senator Buller said this morning to me, he was planting potatoes this morning before he gets here. So this is what our farmers are doing, and we have to really recognize this. And from my personal standpoint, for the opportunity provided to me here to represent the 10,000 plus farmers, the families, farm workers, agro-processors, I will continue to try my best, continue to learn. It's a good experience being here. The connections, the sharing of knowledge, the wisdom, the camaraderie, the vision of wanting to see Grenada do better. The question would be, we may have different ideas how to get there, and I think it was a brilliant idea today by your wisdom, by the chairman at the time, president now, of that select arrangement. Let us look at previewing a lot of these documents so that we can be able to add more value for this country. So I commend you strongly on those guidance. I want to further say, I want to thank everyone who have guided me through my time, who have been supporting me through this period, particularly advising me, the farming community who have been receptive and connected, my friends, families, and I'll say my workplace also, you know, in terms of, you know, I'm here for 3 days, you know, so all of this, I want to thank for the support, both Minister David, Minister Bain Hosford, for reaching out with me, and so I think 2021 will be good, and I will do my best to ensure that I'm not ready, but I would put up a little bit more speed in the process. Thank you so much, and happy holidays to everyone, the staff, of course, and all the officers and so on at the Parliament. I feel safe. I feel at home. I'm not feeling that I'm displaced at all. So thank you so much for the hospitality.
Thank you, Senator Sinclair. Senator Noel.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me just begin with congratulating the clerk for his new position and so on. Let me also, Mr. President, let me thank the frontline workers in Grenada for keeping us safe and so on this far. You know, it would have been a difficult job in this pandemic. As the budget said, COVID-19 as in terms of magnitude and scope was unprecedented. So I would like to thank the nurses, the doctors, ambulance drivers, the farmers, the bus drivers, the police officers, teachers, garbage collectors, and anyone who would have left off. And I want to thank the entire population in general. And I also would like to thank the opposition leader for the opportunity where I could be here in the Senate and making my contribution to the development of this country and so forth. I also would like to thank the Grenadians in the diaspora, as I've been talking about a lot today, who have been helping us out a lot from since almost every disaster that we have. They have been pitching in and significant contribution as well to this country. And despite the global pandemic, where everybody was affected, they still was able to put a lending hand and support people, the Grenadians here and in this country. And as I already said, I just want to thank the entire population and just wishing everybody happy holidays and Merry Christmas and so on. And we know it's a different time, challenging time, different type of Christmas, but at the same time we have to make it our best, try the best out, make the best out of it. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Noel. Senator Judd Cadet?
Yes. Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, like the others, I also want to congratulate the clerk on his, it's an appointment, his appointment. Mr. President, I also want to use this opportunity, this special opportunity to speak to the young people of this country. I think, Mr. President, understanding the challenges that we have went through in 2020, Mr. President, we have went through a lot. We didn't get the time to play our carnival. Some did grab the opportunity, but the fact is, Mr. President, the reality is that many of us did not. A lot of artists, Mr. President, suffer economically this year, and a large portion of them are young people. The promoters, again, a lot of them are young people, Mr. President. Some of them could not have had their events. And now, many of us will not be able to have the Christmas that we would like compared to other years. So, in addition to that, Mr. President, our studies. I am a student at St. George's University, and I can tell you, Mr. President, it was a very challenging time doing it online. And I can say that a lot of students would have suffered from the perspective that many of them, from the environment that they had to study, if they do not have the conducive environment, some of them struggled. And sometimes you're doing your exam and your internet drop in the middle of that. In fact, I remember one situation where a girl would have gotten an F in a particular course, and some of this situation did happen. So we struggled a lot, but the fact is we have made it through, many of us have made it through to the end of the year, to 2020, and we're looking forward to 2021. As you rightly said, we have just passed a great plan for 2021, and we're very hopeful. I'm very certain, Mr. President, that with the outlook of things, the fact that we have the vaccine on the way, the fact that we are now getting to understand this virus. In fact, Mr. President, I remember we called 2020 one of the worst periods, not just because of COVID, but how it started. You remember when it started with what seems to be like a World War III between the US and Iran. And many of us were scared that some craziness would have happened. And then a famous NBA star, Kobe Bryant, died in the helicopter crash. So that was very scary for a lot of young people. But now moving into 2021, with the great plan that we presented over the last 3 days, I'm very certain, Mr. President, and we are very hopeful that a lot of things will open up for us. We are very certain that, looking at what will happen, more jobs and more opportunities will come to us. We're hoping that, Mr. President, that our studies some level of normalcy will return. And we're looking forward to a lot of things happening. And hopefully, Mr. President, we will have a lot of activities return. I know, for example, one young lady, she was telling me yesterday that she returned from Tanzania, and she was actually saying that she was looking forward to this Christmas to celebrate with her family. Many of us will not be able to do that in a large gathering. But I also, Mr. President, want to let our young people know to continue to adhere to the protocols, because this is important, because we don't want we don't want to spread this virus. And this is a very serious virus, and we must adhere to this protocol so that we can return to some normalcy. At this point in time as well, I want to wish them happy holidays. I want to wish everyone happy holidays. Mr. President, it has been a great pleasure being in this honorable house. I always love to listen to debate among us and the other side. I am happy to have our 3 new senators this year. And I congratulate you all on your maiden presentation. It was a pleasure listening to you guys. But Mr. President, again, I want to wish everyone a happy holidays, and we'll look forward to working with you in 2021. And we have a lot of work to do. And I'm happy to hear our Labour Senator mentioning that you will be working with us even more. And this is much more important because, as Mr. Diallo would have said, that a lot is bent on the relationship. And we look forward to the cooperation, because this is very important, because we have a lot of work to do, a lot of opportunities to provide for our people, a lot of hope. So I thank you, Mr. President, and I wish everyone, again, I want to say happy holidays.
Thank you, Senator Cadet. Senator Sincere.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, like the colleagues who would have gone before, I wish to enthusiastically congratulate the clerk. We would have had many discussions as it relates to education before my becoming a senator, and I know he's very, very passionate about education. So congratulations, sir, on your elevation. I wish you all the best in this new post, and I know you're going to do a great job. Mr. President, I would also like to take this opportunity to encourage the entire nation. I'm not sectioning out anybody, but the entire population. Encourage the entire population to pay attention to the protocols and the procedures that are in place. Wear your mask, do your sanitizations, wash your hands, stay, continue with the social distancing. Do all that is within your power to keep yourself safe and to keep others safe. Mr. President, I would also like to wish the honorable members of this House, starting with you, Mr. President. I must confess, at times when I saw an email from you, I scratched my head and I say, oh boy, you would have offered me quite a number of opportunities, but those opportunities came with work, time and effort, learning, but yes, work. And I do have some things pending to report. I'm a bit tardy with that, but I can assure you that they're going to be coming your way. So I wish everybody here, I know we say happy holidays, I choose to say Merry Christmas, and I hope I'm not stepping on any toes based on beliefs. I choose to say Merry Christmas. I wish everybody all the best for 2021. We are always stronger together, even though we sit on different sides of the aisles. Believe, continue to believe. I know we spoke of resilience in the budget debate, and we have always been a resilient people. COVID-19 could only take us down if we allow it to take us down. And I've been saying to some of my friends and family members, change our mindset, change our thinking. What you focus on is what you see manifest in front of you all the time. So if you only focus on the problems or the challenges associated with COVID, that's what would be, perpetuated in your mind or in your thinking. I also want to take this opportunity, Mr. President, to encourage us to look out for our neighbors. There are some persons, who walk around stressed, perhaps frustrated, offer a helping hand. It would be a good thing this Christmas for those of us who have, to give something to others. I've already started, although I do not say it. I love my gardening. I love my gardening. So I have a little backyard garden, and I got so much sorrel, and I, harvested my sorrel, and I started giving out to some friends and family. So I want to encourage us as a population to look out for our neighbors, to look out for our friends, to look out for each other. Yes, we have differences, but we're all Grenadians, and we have to be our brothers' keepers. Again, there is always something to be thankful for, always. We may have a lot of challenges, as I said, but there is always something to be thankful for. So I want to encourage us, as a people, to continue being hopeful, to continue to believe that, we're going to get through this. This is, but a pandemic. Others have survived it, and we more than likely would survive it if we do the right things. On that note, Mr. President, again, I just wish to thank everybody here. The opposition team, phenomenal. Secretary, I call her so many times. The clerk, I may be frustrating with so many questions that, I need guidance on. Terry, for his support, obviously the opposition leader, and only yesterday I had to express my gratitude for him believing in me to offer me such a position and to support me through this journey so far. Despite our debates inside here, believe it or not, I like the bunch, just as Judd expressed. I really like this bunch. We may knock heads softly sometimes and very hard other times, but it's all about the nation's business. And again, I urge us to, continue taking this seriously because our nation is depending on us. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Sincere. Senator Bowler, is he all right? I'm seeing. Yeah.
Yes, Mr.
I'm
President.
operating with my reading glasses. So,
Yes,
yeah.
it's all right. And I am not so clear that you can read me easily. So thank you very much, Mr. President. Like the others before me, I'd like to congratulate my friend, of course, the clerk, on his ascension to a higher position in the organization that you've been involved with, and I really do hope that it doesn't only bring satisfaction for you, but that through whatever work you will engage yourself in, that our country as a whole will reap some of the benefits. I'd like to, Mr. President, thank all of the staff of this chamber and the House in general, whether they are permanently here or auxiliary staff. They have made our stay here a very pleasant one, and for that we are very grateful. As one of our senators said earlier on, we feel very safe. We feel that we're in a very secured place, and so we appreciate that, and we want to wish them a really happy Christmas, and enjoyable holidays. Mr. President, because of my background and the length of time that I've spent with the farming community and so many people there, I want to especially single them out and to wish them, not as the senator for them here, but as a friend of the farming community. And just to mention, there was something of importance that just slipped me yesterday in my presentation that I wanted to mention, and it came as a result of our young senator here, Brother Cadet, speaking about the fact that I think, I'm trying to remember the country you said, the Netherlands, was it? Yes, the Netherlands, despite their small size, have been doing tremendous things in terms of production because they are using the science and the technology, and that they are into the hydroponics and other things like that. And there's a serious farmer in our country who for almost 30 years now has been in farming. He's someone that is well known to most of us. He's from our neck of the woods. We normally call him BJ. Most of us know him. He has just cleared from the docks a 40-foot container, Mr. President, with all of the equipment to set up a modern hydroponic farm, something that cost in the region of $500,000 US. And I thought it was important to mention that because I wanted the other farmers of Grenada to know that despite we complain a lot about what we don't have and the shortage of X, Y, and Z, if we take this thing on seriously as a business and we put effort into it, it could pay off well for us. So I just wanted to put that on the table and to wish him as a shining example because over the years, and the Senator for Agriculture would know that because he has dealt with him many times being at the marketing board level and understanding. And with that serious investment, of course with the support of government, with the concessions and other things like that, I believe we can reach very far in terms of our food security, in terms of the levels of production that we can increase, and the possibility of ensuring that for the export market, we don't just have quantity, but quality produce that we can compete with others. I want to also use this opportunity, Mr. President, to thank all of the members of this chamber, but especially those on this side, for the confidence, and of course, the Honorable Prime Minister for giving me another opportunity to be back in this house. And I feel the warmth, and I feel very welcome and at home. You know, it's a new building, but in terms of feeling accommodative, I feel very, very much at home. And I thank all of those who made that possible for doing that, but at the same time to wish them a really happy holidays. And it has been said many times before by many different senators here, but cannot be overexpressed, that we need to continue to follow the protocols and make sure that we remain safe as a people. Sometimes you get the impression when you listen to some people that they are of the opinion when the government ask or people in authority ask that you follow the protocols, that you're trying to back them in a corner. You're trying to take away, as some people say, my constitutional rights. But I want to remind them that many of those protocols are put in place for safeguarding our own lives. And of course, we have a responsibility individually. Government, the ministry, the frontline workers, the doctors, the medical experts, the scientists can only do so much. And if we fail to do our part, then, you know, we can't blame anyone. But overall, I wish to thank everybody again and to wish every single one of us, those here, those outside of here, those who have been listening, those who give support in different ways, seen and unseen, a really Merry Christmas, a happy holidays, and to encourage them to keep the protocols and make sure that they remain safe, so that 2021, all of the plans that we make, working together, and have been given not only public commitment, but private commitment by my friend from Labour, that we will work together to ensure that we achieve what this country needs for the benefit of everyone. We must all benefit as a result of the efforts that we'll put out. But that can only happen if we stay alive. You know, and I want to remind us of a little quote that I sometimes use that says, it doesn't matter how far down the wrong road we have gone, there's still time for us to stop, make the change, and get onto the right path. So I believe there is hope, Mr. President. I believe that if we understand that success starts from within us, and we believe that strongly enough, we will overcome, we will beat COVID, we will get above or climb above, rise above all of the challenges that we face, and be a successful people in 2021. As I close, Mr. President, I want to thank my wife and, of course, my children, the family. They have always been a pillar of support. And while my goodly senator to my right, my immediate right, that sits to my immediate right, doesn't want to say it publicly, but oftentimes, without their permission, we don't get the opportunity to be here, to act in the way we act. So thank you to them. And I know together, private as it is, we'll make this holiday season a very special one. Merry Christmas, everyone, and a very blessed night.
Senator Boda. Okay, senators. Hello? Well, I didn't see a light.
I thought,
Senator Steele.
Mr. President, my remarks are going to be very, very brief. It's simply to thank my colleague senators on this side for all of their support, their work, the contribution that they have made over the course of this last year. And it's been an extraordinary year, extraordinarily difficult, extraordinarily challenging. But working with my colleagues here and other colleagues in government, I think what we've been able to demonstrate is what can be achieved in difficult times with unity and with cooperation. So it's been an absolute pleasure for the course of this last year, and I know the year that we have ahead of us is going to be just as, if not more, challenging. And then colleagues on the other side, a number of new faces, welcome once again, and thank you once again for your contributions. And these last 3 days have been very intense, very fruitful, and have contributed to the discussion as to what we need to do moving forward. So to the clerk, deputy clerk, officers, presiding officer, Mr. President, a thank you to all of you for your support too, and the work that goes on behind the scenes. I think it's easy to take for granted that all of this just happens. We turn up and do our thing. But I certainly have an appreciation of the amount of work that takes place behind the scenes, and it's much appreciated. So that just leaves me to wish everyone a happy Christmas, a happy and safe Christmas. This Christmas itself is going to be a little unusual, those of us who are particularly sociable and having to curb that. But please have safe time with your families, rest, energize, re-energize, and let's do what we have to do in the new year. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Steer. Honorable members, it has been quite a long day and a very intense 3-day sitting of the Senate. As usual, not being part of the debate, I do make some observations coming out of that engagement, which I would want to share very briefly. In fact, I've condensed significantly what I wanted to say because we had a very long and productive day today. Let me begin first by thanking the clerk, Andrew Augustine, firstly for his promotional achievement in the field of education, going on to the leadership level of one of the international bodies dealing with education. That is really quite an astounding achievement for a small country, and it speaks to his ambassadorial acumen as well as his intellectual discipline, and that he's been able to combine that work with the work of the Senate and leading the parliamentary staff. Secondly, I want to most profusely thank the staff of Parliament. It has been a very difficult year, and we have had support from them in many quarters. Senator Cox mentioned the early days of the outbreak of COVID. This Parliament building became the headquarters of the COVID committee. And while everybody else were on lockdowns, save a few public officers, some parliamentary staff were coming here to make sure that the command headquarters for the advisory committee on COVID was kept in place, and to ensure that, because we were working from morning to night, sometimes gathering here as early as 6 o'clock, and sometimes leaving here as late as 9 and 10, we had to have food during the lockdown, and there were parliamentary staff who were coordinating all of this to make this possible so that we could provide the necessary advice to the executive to keep this country safe. I would like to acknowledge and thank again the work of the our GPF and your police officers who are here and who come here both symbolically but also to provide the necessary security. And they do this at every sitting. They have had a very difficult time this year because of the role that they have had to play, manning roadblocks, enforcing curfews, and in some cases dealing with the normal routine of criminality and other things. It has been a very difficult year for them, and they have performed in an outstanding manner and have contributed significantly to all that we have been able to achieve. So far, Grenada has recorded no deaths, and this is a marvelous achievement of which I am singularly proud, but of which many people have contributed. The medical team, the team of the advisory committee, all of the healthcare personnel. I don't want to name any single person, but all of those frontline workers in different fields have contributed. We are in a phase in this pandemic now which was always anticipated, but which we worked and hoped would never have arrived. But it is here. There's a very significant statement which was made as the theme of one of the contributions in this morning's debate. And I want to repeat it, but I want to add a little amendment to it. And I chose it because it stuck out when it was made. And it encapsulates the period that we are in most adequately. And this was the opening theme statement by Senator Williams. And she said this: "This battle can only be won by the people and government," and I would add, plus science, and I put that in square brackets, working together. And that is such an axiomatic accuracy that I have adopted it. We can only confront this successfully if we are working together. Right? And I've added science. So scientifically working together, we will overcome COVID. It is not the first pandemic the world has faced. 100 years ago, if we were living then, we would be doing exactly what we are doing now: wearing masks, keeping social distancing, washing our hands, and burying our dead. We have had significant breakthroughs in that science has medical science and other science, branches of science have advanced, and now several vaccines are in sight. Even Cuba is working on a vaccine. But notwithstanding the application of 2 vaccines right now, today as I speak, the United States recorded its highest death in this entire pandemic. I think it was over 3,000 people died. So yes, there's hope. Yes, there's a vaccine on the horizon. Yes, we are going to overcome this pandemic. There's absolutely no doubt about this. This is not the end of the world. Some may wish to preach that, but it is not. There is a science which tells us how we must deal with it. And each of us, this is not a government battle. This is a battle for each citizen to follow the guidelines that are scientifically based and that will protect you and your family. From this broad theme arises a fundamental principle that has always been part of the journey of people struggling to improve their humanity. Whether it's the battle against slavery and oppression, whether it's the battle against colonialism, whether it's the national liberation battle, whether it's a trade union industrial battle, there is one principle that emerges that has always assisted in success. And it's captured in one simple word: solidarity. The World Health Organization has been using that word over and over again, and I think this is why Grenada has secured a contingent of vaccines, because of this whole concept of solidarity. It's a fundamental principle of the labor movement. The challenges brought on by this pandemic are many. The loss of jobs. 14,000 jobs have been lost. The responsibilities of the government of a state is different from the responsibilities of the governance of a trade union or for the governance of a business. Because while the responsibilities of the leadership of the governance of a business is to look after the business of the shareholders and the board, and some were conscientious enough to, and democratically minded enough and have a social conscience, would see that the workers are important in this. And while the leadership of those in the trade union movement is to look after its members and so on, we have to be clear that with government, it has to look after the citizens. And this is an important thing to bear in mind, because 14,000 jobs have been lost. And in the loss of those jobs, most of it is in the private sector. When I look at what has happened to LIAT, it has brought tears to my eyes, because for years I've worked with that organization and I've been warning that this day will arrive. I know workers who have given 40 years of service to that business and have been home since March and have not received a cent in compensation after 40 years of service. And in that 40 years, some have lost 20 years of pension. And then the pension that they currently receive can't handle the challenges that they face in the evening of their years. It's a very sad situation. Many businesses have closed. Some are on the brink of closure. And uncertainty prevails. In this situation, many aspects of the economy has been impacted. Our farmers have been affected significantly. One of our largest single employers, in fact, the second largest single employer only after government, St. George's University, almost all of its faculty and students are now off island. That has significant implications for the property rental market, because you can see all of those buildings which were put up to house students and faculty are now empty. There's no income. The banks have invested an enormous amount of people's money lending those property owners who are unable to service that debt. So we face a congregation in that industry if things collapse and we can't get the economy moving again. Some hotels have suspended business. Others have had to close half of the hotel. In that context, therefore, the payment of utilities is problematic. Many other hotels, faced with pressure from the banks to have to pay or meet part of the mortgage, made choices of which of the critical bills they have to pay. So I can tell you that some utilities are not receiving payment simply because their clients, some of them big hotels, are unable to pay. One of the largest supermarkets in the South that catered primarily for the SGU community and those connected to it, and which provided a market for farmers who produce vegetables and other things like that, are no longer capable of selling because that market has collapsed and the business is facing difficulty. The fishermen, you can see them on the side of the street, and in some instances they are selling high quality fish, which can fetch 10 to 15 US dollars a pound, being sold at $3 a pound. Literally giveaway. Now it may be a good thing because it means we're not going and purchase the chemically treated chicken. But think about the fishermen who invested $50,000 in their long line equipment, and they have to repay that money. So they are suffering losses as well. Think about the fact that the state has lost, in terms of its revenue, almost 50% Senator Steele. And the state has not only to look after members, it has to look after citizens, especially those who don't have a voice in organized labor that has a voice. Think about the youngsters who graduated and can't find any work in the labor market. Many of their parents are now at home. Think about the fact, I heard insults being thrown at the National Insurance Scheme because they were paying $300. But we must understand that $300 is unfunded because there is no unemployment insurance set up by the NIS. So the money they are using to pay out, and when you have unemployment insurance, there is a joint contributory fund, so that the workers contribute to that fund. Bear in mind that our NIS have certain structural challenges now. We were supposed to increase the retirement rate, as well as increase the contributions. We did a minimum increase in the contribution because we just came out of a structural adjustment, the economic crisis, etc., etc., etc. But we are not on target with the actual recommendations. Yet it has found a way to give some relief, and for some who should know better are throwing scorn on the organization. Colleagues, I recall at a time when I was an activist in the labor movement, when we faced Hurricane Ivan, and everything lay flat and everything lay bare. And at that time, I was the most activist and most ardent fighter against the government of the day. But when I got up that morning after Ivan and I looked around, and I looked up at the prison and I saw it without covering, and I saw prisoners that I knew were in prison outside my door, asking for some water and other things, and I look around and I saw the devastation. I journeyed up to the home of the Prime Minister. And I said, "Sir, I'm here. How can I help? How can I help?" Because I realized at the time, this was a time for a peace treaty to address the devastation that faced our country. Because that devastation made no distinction amongst Grenadians. The 2008 financial crisis came. And I remember when it was, I think in November or October in 2008, we convened the second highest decision-making body of the union which I then led. And we did an analysis of the coming crisis. The banks were collapsing in the United States. There was contagion in the economy all over the world was collapsing. And we did an analysis. And that analysis said that the coming crisis, the only how we could confront this is working together. And that the most important thing for us, as those who represent organized labor, and let's make it clear, the working class is larger than organized labor. The working class includes the women who do the bushing, whether it's 3 times a year or 4 times a year. It includes those who are incapable of taking care of themselves. It includes the youngsters who would have gone through secondary school but has no job because the economy has not expanded sufficiently to provide employment for them. They all make up the working class. It makes up the partially homeless and the homeless as well. And I could recall the need for us to cooperate and the need for us to de-emphasize conflict. Yes, there are unconscionable business persons whose only interest is profit. And in very recent times, some of them have visited us. Some of them have visited us, believe you me. Some of them have visited us. Some of them have used the power of money to throw scorn on us. I remember us, we had just completed, after a long time of trying, a collective agreement which gave significant increases to a group of workers. I think the overall increase might have been 20-something%. I believe it was 688 or whatever it was, like maybe inaccurate in the numbers. But during that period of crisis, when the business owners said, business is collapsing, we are unable to sell, and therefore we have to send workers home, we went back to the decision we took in that October-November period where we said jobs was the most important thing. And do you know, we sat with that employer, and in exchange for keeping the workers employed, we gave up those increases that we negotiated. And it was a battle, because there were some amongst the workers who, by virtue of their talent, could still find employment within the economy and had no care. In other words, the issue of solidarity, they were prepared to abandon. And their position was, I ain't giving up nothing, let them pay me and or close the place down. I can recall sitting in the union headquarters with a group of these workers up to midnight, arguing with them, let us give up those increases and save the jobs. Because when I looked at those who would benefit from the jobs, They were mainly single young girls. Several of them were single mothers with no place else to work, no place else for food to come on the table. And it was nearing midnight, we finally were able to convince a majority to vote in favor of giving back. And we gave up the increases. On the other hand, there was a fellow trade union group who threw scorn on us, accused us of sellout, and decided they ain't giving up nothing at all. What happened to them? Within weeks, the business convened a meeting and announced that they're retrenching half the staff. Now, when we took that decision, the employer worked with us. The workers remained on the job for 2 years. Ultimately, the business collapsed and was sold. But the workers had 24 months of additional employment, whereas those who refuse to be elastic, those who refuse to be engaging, those who refuse to be flexible, because the only reason why the dinosaurs are around, are not around, sorry, and we are around, and other animals remain or evolve, is because the dinosaurs weren't flexible. They were not evolvable, so they died under the circumstances. So when the business ultimately collapsed, the workers had 24 months pay because they were working for 24 months, and that 24 months pay put them in a higher category. So when they had to receive severance pay, they got a higher level of severance. Whereas those who were not adaptable, those who were mechanical and straight, not prepared to change, not prepared to concede, they went under 24 months earlier than we did. Now come 2013. And in 2013, I was head of the negotiating team for the public workers together with Sister Madonna. And we had negotiated a set which led to a 66% increase at the commencement of 2014. There was a general election, and those increases were supposed to come on board. But we had a situation where 300 CCC workers, represented by the union that I led, were out of work for more than 5 years. And I received a call from the current Prime Minister who asked me to come to his office. And I went. And he said to me, look, the increase which has been negotiated and signed, we will honor it. The CCC is demanding that the unpaid money due to them had climbed back up to $20-something million. They are holding the contract for the new phase of the CCC road program. But for them to be able to start that new phase, the government must fork out, I think it was $8 or $9 million to pay them. And that is the money I have to pay the 6% increase. And I said simply, Prime Minister, solidarity. I will go and talk to my rest of union colleagues, but I believe it's proper for the money which was to be paid out to public officers who were employed for all of the years that the CCC workers were unemployed, and who for the first opportunity in years were going to find employment, that if we were true to the principle of solidarity, then those who are employed should have no difficulty in allowing those funds which were due to them legitimately to be paid to CCC, so that CCC 300 workers and their families could get a source of bread and that the 6% which is supposed to have been implemented in January, to those who are always at work, they could get that money paid on a pay-later plan somewhere down the road. That's solidarity. And I'm explaining this to you because that I can tell this is my personal experience. And the 300 workers and their families were re-employed by the CCC, putting bread on the table for many. And I say this because the state has an obligation. And the working class is not just organized labor. It is more than organized labor. It are those debauchers that I see on the side of the road. We throw scorn on them. We say that they're exploited and they only get work once or twice a year. But imagine how worse off they would be if they didn't have that work. So I make an appeal to my trade union comrades. Solidarity. During the entire course of the lockdown of the pandemic, all of you who were due to be paid were paid. And this is in a context where the payer loses 50% of his revenue. He has had to divert money into trying to procure scarce PPE. And Senator Cox is here. Senator Cox knows the tearful moments we've had. Sitting here, trying to source equipment from parts of the world. He knows the telephone calls we had to make to get equipment from Honduras to arrive here. But Honduras had no diplomatic relations with Venezuela because the only plane we could have found to fly all the way to Honduras was from the Venezuelans. And through our diplomatic and fraternal and solidarity contacts, we were able to get the equipment dropped in Nicaragua, Senator Cox, and then get that to go to Venezuela and then ultimately to get to Grenada. So that our frontline staff could have some basic equipment, because remember, this disease came like a thief in the night, caught all of us unprepared. Even the great United States did not have PPEs. Frontline workers had to don themselves in garbage bags in order to go to work. So I make this appeal for those who receive pay on time. Because of the lockdown, most were home. And while home, they were still qualifying for annual vacation leave as though they were fully working. It's no fault of theirs. But if we are true to our fundamental principles, then that word solidarity requires us to consider seriously in the phase, and we're being told now that this phase which is now occurring in the pandemic is worse than anything we are going to see. Even with the vaccine, the United States today hit its largest number of deaths ever. So I make this appeal, an open appeal to my trade union comrades. Don't go the way of the dinosaurs. If you are not flexible, if you are not nimble, if you are not considerate, as I speak to you now, it's out in the public, 400 odd workers are going to be now on the breadline because Sandals has announced. I'm not saying anything that's private, it's all out in the public, that they are closing their doors. Which means 400 people are out of bread. So those who have bread already guaranteed must give some consideration of saying, well, okay, my bread is guaranteed, my bread is being paid on time, I am due to get an increased portion of bread. I am prepared to wait until the bread man is in a better position. And that increase that I get out of solidarity, share it with my brothers who are going out of work. That to me is the moral imperative of the time. I know there will be some who will throw slurs at the direction of what I have to say. But I care not. I bring the message, and this message comes from deep within. This message comes because Cuba is under increased embargo. Venezuela is under increased embargo. We are short of nurses and trained people to deal with infectious diseases. Where did we have to turn to? Cuba. Cuba sent a recent contingent of nurses and infectious specialists who are now here in Grenada. Solidarity. That's a country that's under embargo. I mean, if you visit Havana today, you can see the effects of the embargo. They've had to send people, they've sent fighters of diseases to Italy when the Ebola crisis broke out. A country that's under embargo cannot import medicines. So I say to my colleagues in the labor movement, the best test of leadership is during difficult times. So I say to my colleagues in the labor movement who are privileged to have a collective agreement that guarantees them an increase, to defer taking that increase so that money is available to go to those who desperately need it. And I end on that theme in the Christian period of goodwill. Happy holidays to you and your family, and to everyone. And please keep safe. A mask under your chin or covering your mouth is no mask at all. This is a respiratory illness. And unless you cover your respiratory orifices, nose and mouth, a mask under your chin is no protection at all. The only person you're fooling is yourself. So wear your mask properly, stay away from large crowds, which is what I did when I went to Venezuela to monitor the elections. I never entered the dining room. I stayed away from the dining room and had room service. When I came back, I did my quarantine and I was cleared on Sunday last. When I got on the bus, well, there were just 6 of us on the bus. And I was privileged to be in the company of Evo Morales. And happy am I. The gentleman whose government was removed, declared illegal, even though he indicated that he will run the elections again, with the support of certain big powers, which I will not name, he was removed from office. He had to flee to Mexico. They then recognized as an interim president somebody who never ran in a presidential election. And then they organized an election. And Evo, all the way in Mexico, his party swept that election and did even better than they did when he was last there, so he's now back in Bolivia. And I had the privilege of being in the group, his group. So, once again, the Christian period of goodwill. I bid you all the best for the season. Happy holidays. And look forward to meeting you to face a new year, which will be a difficult year. Make no mistake about it. We have planned to confront it. There's a plan. You may or may not agree with the plan, because this is what democracy is all about. But there's a plan to confront it on the economic front. But I again make my appeal to those who are fortunate to have a signed collective agreement with an increase in guaranteed salaries, to defer that increase, to be able to allow the state to deal with those dozens of other workers. 400 of them are being on the unemployment line. 400 of them. I think I've said enough, honorable members. I thank you once again, police officers and others who are assembled club. I thank you once again, and I bring this sitting of the House to an end. Senators adjourn, sine die.
Are you a small business and would like your business to grow? Do you have an event, products, or services that people should know about? Be wise. Advertise. Book your spot on GBN Shopping Guide. Be part of Grenada's biggest advertising medium, the Grenada Broadcasting Network. Call our sales department now on 440-2446 or 440-3033 or GBN plus the number sign. Email us at sales@gbn.gd. Special conditions apply.
Beauty has just been turned up a notch in the Spa Style at Spa Style Retreat Spa and Hair Salon. It is your one-stop shop for hair, facials, nails, massages, and waxing. Conveniently located inside the Spiceland Mall, Grand Dance. Their modern air-conditioned salon offers a large range of services and treatments for both men and women. Their staff members are all professionally trained and use only professional products. Open Sunday through Saturday. Call Spiceland Retreat Spa and Hair Salon